Step 5 is we're going to insert our tail feathers. So you should take this, if you have an iron, you're going to iron it in a triangle and fold it again and iron it again. And you want to make sure these edges are basically even. This one dips down a lot more than that one, so maybe I'll trim that a little bit so now they're about the same level. Okay, if you remember, our bird is inside out right now. If I put the tail in like this, when I turn the bird right side out, the tail is going to be inside the bird. So the tail needs to go in this direction. Like that. But angry birds are not technically square. They're more triangle shaped, right? So it's not going to go in like this. Our X is right, this is wrong. What you're going to do is with it open like this, we're going to take this seam and connect it down with this seam, kind of like a fortune teller. And now in this opening, with the point in, I'm going to stick this in like so. There we go. I'm going to push these opposite because that's less layers of fabric I have to sew through. Please note, we've got one layer of gray, 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of black, another layer of gray, and then where our seam allowances are, there's 2 more layers of gray. This is a lot of layers to sew through, so you're going to need to be careful to make sure you get through it all. I'm going to add a couple pins to keep my tail in straight. Make sure you pull this all the way to each end so we got a nice straight line, not that it's bowed or anything. And I'm just going to put one right here in the corner. And another one in this corner. It's still a very good idea to mark where you're going to sew. It's just a lot of layers, so you need to be careful. So we're sewing at a 1/2 inch for this. So there's a 1/2 inch mark. Here's a 1/2 inch mark. And then I need to make sure my edge is actually straight, or I'm not really going to be a 1/2 inch in the middle. And it's totally fine to just like smash all of this flat for now. There's me a sewing line. My needle has a little bit of thread, but by the time I tie a knot and sew like 2 stitches, I'm going to have to tie a knot again. So I'm just going to start off with new fresh thread to begin with. Goodbye thread. There we go. There's me a new knot. And we just carry on our little way because the tail is also going to stick out from the bird and it's potentially going to get pulled on. It needs to be a little bit more secure. I don't suggest the running stitch for a security reason, but also you're going to have a hard time bending your needle back and forth through all these layers. I suggest doing a back stitch, and I'd actually suggest just going back and forth through the fabric. Okay, I'm doing the back stitch backwards again. Really quick, I will swap up to the right side. Okay, whenever you get to pins, as long as you have a stitch right near the pin, you can pull the pin out. There we go. Okay, so I got my stitch here and I'm in the back. I'm going to come, focus little camera. There we go. I'm going to come up from the back. About a stitch length away. Pull the thread through. And I'm going to come back down at the end of that stitch. There we go. And I'm going to come through all my layers, about a stitch length away, pull it through, then go back in at the end of that stitch. I suggest stabbing through this way than any of my other stitches I've done, because there's so many layers. My stitches are getting pulled into the fabric because it's so thick. So it's getting a little bit more difficult for you to see them. Because felt is kind of fluffy. And when I pull the thread tight, it sucks it down into the fluffiness. My suggestion when you sew this is do not have a camera between you and the fabric, because everything just looks different through a camera. Looks like I'm just barely going to have enough thread to be able to tie a knot. Push my luck. It's hard to come up through a needle. Make sure you come right to the edge of your bird, as you don't want the fluff that we stuffed the bird with to escape. Okay. Since I was not looking at the back, my stitches are a little bit funky on this side, but they're straight here, which means they'll be fine. I now need a knot right here, and I think I'm going to take a stitch of my fabric and put my needle through the loop before I pull it tight. And repeat. Stitch of fabric. Catch that loop. The thread's getting too short. See if I can get a third one here. I like triple knotting felt. Just barely. Okay, now I can cut my thread. There we go. Got my stitches across here holding the tail feathers good. It's triangular shaped. If it's not, I'm gonna have to undo all that and do it again. Now there's an opening here. Through the opening, you're literally just gonna start stuffing your bird back through. Dum dum dum. It looks a little bit Frankenmonster with all this red stitching. Uh-oh. I think my knot slipped through there. But that's okay. We're going to sew that end up again so we can fix it. You want to make sure all your corners look pretty good. There we go. Now we got a triangle-shaped bird that's right side out with the beak and the head feathers on the outside. You could sew your eyes and eyebrows on now, or you can wait till after you stuff it. I was just stuffing it first. So you're just going to take your stuffing and you're going to stuff it in here. Stuffing the Angry Bird. You want to make sure your stuffing goes up into these corners. And smaller bits are a little bit easier to stuff in at a time than trying to stuff this whole thing at once. And it looks like I may have given all of you guys a whole lot more stuffing than you need. You can use it for other projects if you want to invent your own stuffed something. Okay, so I stuffed this until it's pretty firm. This corner could use a little bit more. And my seams are only a little bit apart. I don't want them stuffed so full that I can't really pull these together. And your stitches, you don't want to stuff it so much that all of your stitches show up big time. Just a little bit is okay. Okay, for this final stitch, to sew shut our bird, we're going to do a completely different style of stitch. It is called a slip stitch because it slips back and forth between the folds of the fabric that we have right here and ends up being basically invisible. I like to call it my ninja stitch because I like to refer to it as a ninja jumping back and forth between buildings, doing its best to remain hidden so that nobody can see it. For this stitch, you've got a choice. You could do 2 layers of thread like we have so far. Just know it will be slightly more likely to be seen. Or you could so I have the one thread that's really short here and the long one. You could tie a knot clear at the end of the long one and leave this one short. So there's only one thread that goes back and forth through here, so it's less likely to be seen. That is your choice. I'm just going to do it with my 2 threads again. Up to you if you want to try something new. The only thing to know about doing 1 layer is your thread can pop back through the eye of your needle very easily and very quickly, and you might have to thread the needle several times. Okay, got my thread, got my needle, and now I've got my bird. So this is called the slip stitch. At this point, my bird is right side out. I do not want to see my knot on the outside of the bird. So I'm just going to come down inside my bird. I'm going to come out up here because these stitches popped open a little. I think my knot slipped through. And I'm just going to stitch it again. See how the stitches are coming straight across? That's what we're going to do. I'm going to come straight across from here. And then I'm going to stab into the fold and turn my needle so it goes parallel to the fold. I'm always going to go parallel to the fold. And then I'm going to pull it through. Straight across from where I came out so that those holes line up. If the holes line up, the thread is going to be able to slip between those two holes when you pull it tight and actually suck in and disappear. So I'm going to come straight across, parallel, travel down through the fold. Make sure this is a 1/4 inch or less. And pull it a little bit tight. And then I'm just going to make my way across the whole thing. Straight across, parallel, traveling through the fold of fabric here. If you're not traveling through the fold of the fabric with your needle, you're doing something wrong. The trick is to always come straight down from your hole so those two holes will line up. And your stitches, when you pull them tight, actually get sucked in between the layers and basically disappear. The more layers of thread you have, the less likely it will be to disappear. You want this to be as invisible as you can, but I do not mind double layers of thread. See, when I snug the thread up, it slips in between the two layers and disappears. My previous stitches don't, but my new ones do. You just always go straight across, travel through the fold. Straight across and then travel through the fold. There we go. All sewn up, looks pretty good. Now for the knot this time, I suggest doing make a circle by crossing and then coming through. Put your finger right here where it crosses so that it will pull it tight there. There we go again. And I'm going to do 1/3 one. Cross my fingers that I didn't make it too big, because I don't want to see this stitch or the thread hanging out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right here, right where that knot is. I'm going to stab through and come out somewhere else, randomly. I don't care where. I'm going to pull on it. And then, if I hold my fabric steady and I pull tight, felt is funny. You can usually pull the thread right through the fabric so the knot pops through to the inside of the bird. And, well, I actually just broke my thread so it's already cut off. Otherwise, you could just cut it off over here and it will slip in and you won't see your thread at all. Okay, your bird is almost done. We need to put some eyes on here. Eyebrows are optional, but they're kind of fun. And your tail isn't actually done. Right now it's just this wedge. To finish off the tail, see how it folds there? Slip your scissors in this fold. Clip up toward your bird. Now I've got 2 feathers, but 2 more folds. So I'm going to clip down these folds too. So now I have 4 individual feathers on my bird. You could call it quits and leave it here. Or I get students that like to cut little triangles and stuff out of here to make it jagged so it looks kind of like real feathers. Just one looks funny, so I have to do at least 2. But if you know what I'm doing, I don't think you need to see me do lots of videos, lots of time while I go down the rest of it. Now it looks a little bit more like real feathers, a little. I also have students that just like to slit it up this way. That works too. It's your tail feathers, as long as you don't cut them completely off so I can see that you did them. Design them how you'd like. Okay, the eyes. are going to be hand sewn on again. There's a couple different ways to sew these on. Mine's going to look a little bit weird with red thread. Hopefully you have white or black to match the eye color of fabric you're using. It's up to you. Okay, before I put the eye on, I'm going to put the pupil on just because that's a little bit easier for me. I'm going to come up from the back so that my knot is on the back. And you could just go up and down. Whoa. I pushed the knot back through. Up and down in here a few times to sew it down. Like so. Not that it will focus. There you go. Or you can do more of a whip stitch, where you actually come around the edge. Oop. And you're just like whipping around the edge so it stays down. My bird's gonna look really angry with red on it. Like so. There we go. I got my black pupil sewed down to the white of the eye. I kind of like having lots of thread here so that I can then just take it straight to my bird. And I can stab through the bird. And just repeat the entire process. Going around the outside of the eye. I suggest having these about 1/4 inch apart. Or closer. If you wanted to, you could kind of try the slip stitch for this part. So it disappears a little bit more. Just pull it a little tighter and it disappears. Closer you are to the edge, the more it will disappear. Closer it is to the edge, the more likely it has a chance to fall off, but you could do that. If you really want it to disappear, you can kind of just stitch from the underside here, as long as you don't take gigantic stitches on the front. You can experiment, you could Google, see if you can come up with different ways to do it if you'd like. The whip stitch right here is probably one of the most simple. If you wanted to look better, try to have them all about the same length. Because then they look more uniform and nice. If they vary in length and shape, it looks a little haphazard. But that is okay. Eesh. Try to make it look nice. There we go, one eye sewn down. This point you could tie off your knot and pull it through the bird like you did before. I think I'm going to be a little bit silly. I could come straight through. I went straight through the bird. Oh, I should have done the eyebrow first. Oh well. And then straight through the back of my eye here like that. And I haven't sewn my pupil on yet, so I still need to do that. This is called being lazy and not wanting to tie lots of knots on my thread. So I'm just going to quickly go around with some whip stitches to sew the pupil on the eye. Okay, the pupil's good, so I'm going to come out here to the outside of the white. And so the outside of the white on. There we go. If you'd like, you could stop right here. You don't actually have to make your bird angry by having eyebrows on there. But eyebrows really are what makes it the angry bird. I think I'm just going to do a couple of running stitches down and back on this one. As long as how you sew your eyebrows and eyes on is nice and secure so it's not going to like fall off, I am alright if you guys try some different stuff. Nice little accent, that red line there. Okay, I might just barely have enough to do my other eyebrows, so I'm going to give it a whirl and see what I can do. Should have done it before I went to the other side. If you want to have the ends of your eyebrow actually stick off, you're welcome to do that. It's your bird. Be a little bit creative. Show some imagination. And that's the extent that my thread is going to let me do. I can't even bend it in half anymore. If you get into this situation, you can cut your needle off, wrap like a pin around, so you can go around the pin and come through. It pulls the knot down there. Make a loop around the pin. Hand-eye coordination through a camera is tricky, not to mention short thread. Back through the circle. Yeah, come on. There we go, there's two. Take out the pin, tie it down tight. And then, if you don't want this hanging out in the world, you can use your nifty difty needle. You stab it down in so it's nice and short. You then take your thread, thread the needle. You do it one at a time, or if you can get both through the eye of the needle at once, you go for it. And then with my needle threaded, I'm just going to stab it through, and it just pulled my stitches into the inside of my bird, so they can't be seen. And there we go. 100% officially done. Angry bird, nice tail feathers, nice head feathers, beak. If you're physically turning this in, I would pull on these and see if they come off. There we go.